We've got updates from the GM meetings, including Alex Anthopoulos clarifying the team's priorities and a Braves trade target officially being open to waiving his no trade clause. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Wednesday, November 12th. Your source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Just because baseball season's over doesn't mean that Atlanta sports gets kinder to Braves fans. The Atlanta Falcons are favored against the Panthers by 3.5 at home. You'll have to forgive me if I don't feel like that's actually going to happen. And their odds of making the playoffs are worse than their odds of missing the playoffs. So if you want to continue to, if you want to just say, hey, I'm going to make money off of Atlanta sports and go bet them to not do things, FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. All right. The general manager meetings are going on right now in Las Vegas. Clearly, I am not there. Most of the media contingent is not there. Typically, that is like the BBWAA credentialed beat writer people that are actually in Vegas. But Alex Anthopoulos did talk to the media, David O'Brien, Mark Bowman, those guys, and discussed a little bit about clarifying further priorities of the team and what they're working on, the payroll targets and all of that. So let's talk about that. Let's also talk about them finalizing the coaching staff, right? Getting the last few coaches in place and what AA said about that and what they were trying to do. We'll do all of that today. But we're going to start with what the Braves are working on, because we know the needs, right? We know the needs are bullpen, shortstop, starting pitcher is what the team, like the front burner needs for the Braves. And then if they're able or, have the ability to, or the chance to add a bat at a good price, they're not opposed to doing it. But AA kind of clarified what they're spending the most time on right now, right? What is the focus at this moment? And it's starting pitcher and shortstop. Like, they're going to work on the bullpen. They know that they need to get the bullpen fixed. And the question there about Joe Jimenez, like, they don't know whether they're going to have him or not. They'll find out more in January. But in the meantime, they are working on those two areas. They are working on shortstop. They are working on starting pitcher. The actual quote here, quote, I would say starting pitcher and shortstop are what we're spending the most time on right now. That's thanks to Mark Bowman of MLB.com, who wrote that up. Apparently very, very early this morning. It posted at like 6:45 Eastern time, and he's out in Vegas. He probably submitted it last night. And that kind of mirrors a lot of what we've seen, right? Like, the bullpen arms just take a little bit longer to come off the board. Look at, like, even some of the best guys. Look at what Tanner Scott signed last year. Part of the reason that Tanner Scott signed with the Dodgers is because nobody else would pay him. Or I guess nobody else would pay him what they were willing to pay him. They realized, hey, it's late January and he's still on the market. We can swoop in with a little better offer because he hasn't gotten what he's looking for yet, and we can go ahead and sign him. It makes sense that they want to focus on shortstop and starting pitcher first. My concern here with this, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I do think it's more important to focus on shortstop. My concern is how much will that cost and how much money are they trying to reserve for the bullpen? And we don't know that. AA does not like to give us explicit numbers. He's even gotten to the point where he doesn't want to say payroll's going to go up because when it doesn't happen, and again, I really feel like that wasn't his fault, but when it doesn't happen, he gets criticized for it. So he doesn't even want to say payroll is going to go up. And speaking of, actually, he was also asked about being a top 5 payroll in 2026. Because, again, I talked about this last week. Terry McGurk said on the earnings call his goal was to have a top 5 payroll. Unlike a lot of the reporting that's out there, he did not say he wanted to do that in 2026. I want to clarify that. Mark Bowman's article that he wrote up says in 2026. A lot of other places who have picked up on that story after I talked about it, put the tweet out and all of that, have added the in 2026 part. Terry McGurk never said 2026. He said aiming for the top 5, quote, is a place I want to get to, and I think we're capable of doing that. And then he said the Braves would be, quote, quite active in the free agent market and the trade market, because one of the priorities was, quote, adding a couple of players to a veteran win-now squad that has years of success ahead. He never explicitly said the words 2026. He never said the next season. That's something that everybody who has talked about this story has added after the fact. So I just want to make that clear. That's a thing that he has not said. But AA was asked about being a top 5 payroll. And I said this, I think it was late last week or early this week. I don't think it matters if you're at $250 million or whatever. I think it matters how you get there, what you spend that money on. But AA did not want to address this. Quote, right now we're just so focused on addressing needs. We'll just see where that ends up. And AA's, the way he's always kind of handled that is the money is there. And the impression that I get from all of these different conversations about payroll levels with AA is the money is there, but he's not just going to spend money to spend money, right? He's not going to throw money at a problem. They are comfortable spending money if they feel like it's a good deal, like there's value that the Braves can get there. And again, for better or worse, maybe that is or is not the best way to handle this. I actually had a listener suggestion, shout out Dr. Keith out in Mississippi, about doing a podcast and a newsletter on if we try to like moneyball it, right? Where we try to find market inefficiencies and get discounts on guys, what that offseason might look like. I'm going to work on that. Probably early next week is the goal on that one. But AA's whole thing, as we have clearly seen, he doesn't want to make bad deals, right? The Braves don't want to be stuck into incredibly long-term bad deals, which like makes sense why they are probably not going to be in on Bo Bichette. I've talked about that on this show before. I don't think that deal ages well. I think if you pay Bo Bichette for 7 years, you are regretting years 5 and 6 and 7 in that deal. It's part of the reason they didn't want to give that 6th year to Freddie Freeman. They did not believe that it would be a good deal in that 6th year, and for better or worse, right? Certain situations, I think you need to come off of that and make the deal, but neither here nor there. So what AA is saying is shortstop and starting pitcher are the priority, and the money, they're not necessarily, he's not saying I have to spend whatever amount, right? They're going to address needs. They're not even incredibly concerned with where they end up, provided, and this is me having heard AA say this before, provided they don't end up above the 3rd CBT tier where they have a draft pick move back. We've heard AA talk about that before. The opportunity cost for going over the first 2 tiers of the CBT is just money. It's just an additional line item on payroll. The opportunity cost of going into the 3rd tier is your draft pick gets moved back. So you start to have more, it's not just money at that point. Which also is another argument for, hey, AA is probably not going to pop a qualifying offer, right? Simply because not only is it's worse than having a draft pick move back, you lose one completely. And like we talked about yesterday, not only do you lose one completely, you lose a higher draft pick with more money attached. Again, the PPI pick plus the plus the first round pick, assuming it's in that top 6, which is where Atlanta's favored to be in the lottery, assuming it's in that top 6, That is more money, or close to the same amount of money as the Braves had in the entire draft last year. So I genuinely think you're not going to see them pop a qualifying offer, right? Over at bravestoday.com, just this morning, I dropped a piece looking at the offseason scenarios we talked about the other day, but from the perspective of you do not sign a qualifying offer player. And so because of that, I feel like one of the big things you end up having to do is I feel like you end up having to make a trade. You have to get a good trade in this winter if you want to fill all of those needs if you're not doing qualifying offer players. And there's one specific area you have to make the trade to get better. We'll discuss that next right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Encase Cards, custom sports card manufacturer. I love these guys and what they do. It's a fantastic idea. You upload your source photos. You sports make a ton of sense. I did these for my kids, but they have everything. You want to ask somebody to be your maid of honor or your best man, and they're sports fans. You give them a custom sports card. The winners and losers of your fantasy football team. We're doing these for Christmas photos for like our close friends and family, right? We're going to upload these and we're going to use these as Christmas cards. So ncasecards.com, ncascards.com, you upload your photo, you can choose holographic options. There, ideas for backgrounds. Their designers come in, they work with you to get the card the way you want it, right? Where the placement of the text. In my case, I've got my son's positions for baseball. He played for the White Sox because the Little League is sponsored by MLB. And so he's a shortstop, a second baseman, and a pitcher. This team, his number, the year, all of that good stuff on there. They print it front and back on high quality cardstock. They slab it and they put it inside this really cool plastic frame that has a built-in stand. Lots of different colors. You can get black, blue, pink, green, whatever it might be, whatever they have in stock at the time. ncasecards.com, ncascards.com. Promo code Braves today gets you 20% off. That's ncasecards, ncascards.com. Promo code Braves today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. Let's talk about trades. Because I am of the opinion, if you're not going to sign a qualifying offer player, the area with which it's going to be really hard to upgrade if you are looking for quality over quantity is your rotation. Like, you can always go out and sign a guy that is designed to give you innings in the regular season. I mean, right now, if you want to do that, go grab Chris Bassett. He's projected for 2 years and $36 million. It comes out to like $18 million AAV. You can do that right now. Nick Martinez. Maybe you go out and you sign Nick Martinez. You sign Zach Eflin, right? Like there's options. Lucas Giolito's fully healthy from his elbow injury. Maybe you sign Lucas Giolito. He probably goes back to Boston or joins Max Fried. But point is, if you want a guy who can give you innings in the regular season, there's options there. But if you want a postseason starter, you've got to hit the trade market. Because again, if you're not popping a qualifying offer, then a lot of your frontline starters, guys who you would feel comfortable giving them the ball in game 3 of a postseason series, right? It wouldn't be remember, we've started Bryce Elder in game 3. We've started AJ Smith-Shawver in game 1. And nothing against those guys. I love AJ Smith-Shawver. I think he's great. But not everybody was comfortable with the idea of having to do that, right? That was not plan A or plan B. And if you look at the qualifying offer players, 13 guys got qualifying offers. 8 of them are pitchers. 7 of them are starters. It's all the most impactful guys. Dylan Cease, Michael King, Framber Valdez, Zach Gallen, Ranger Suarez. And then you drop into that second tier of guys. Shota Imanaga, Brandon Woodruff. All guys that you could see an argument for, hey, we signed this guy because we think he's going to be a top half of the rotation starter. He's going to be at worst our number 3, right? Guess what? All those guys have qualifying offers. So if you're taking them out, it's a lot harder to find a guy that you want to give the ball for a postseason series. Merrill Kelly, maybe? Do you think Merrill Kelly's a postseason starter for Game 3? The guys you sign without a qualifying offer end up being guys that their goal, like their role, is to get you to October. It's like a Bryce Elder. You give them the ball every fifth day. They give you 160-something innings. And then when you make the postseason, they're in your bullpen. Or they're not on the roster at all. Maybe it's an older veteran, a Max Scherzer or a Justin Verlander. They both want to play in 2026. They'll be in their 40s. Scherzer got back and healthy in time for the World Series and looked pretty decent doing it. But until then, he wasn't on any of the other postseason rounds because he didn't look that good. So MLB Trade Rumors had a list of trade targets. The top 40 trade targets this winter based on credible sourced rumors, based on what made sense, etc. And there are some of these that make a lot of sense. You can put them in a couple different buckets, right? There's division rivals, right? Mackenzie Gore of the Nationals, Sandy Alcantara, Edward Cabrera of the Marlins, okay? You probably don't get deals done for any of those guys because they're in your division, right? There's guys that the team is either cheap and don't want to pay the guy or they just want out of his contract, right? Mitch Keller of the Pirates, Brady Singer of the Reds. I don't think they're postseason starters, but Luis Severino of the A's. We'll have a conversation about that because it does make sense with his history with Jeremy Hefner. Luis Castillo of the Mariners, right? Like there's an option there. But then you've got teams that are rebuilding. Sonny Gray of the Cardinals is rumored to be available. Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez of the Twins could potentially be available. And while I think Friday's show is going to be one where we talk about some of these pairings, making a multiplayer trade, getting more than one guy from a team, I do think it's worth discussing the rebuilding teams and specifically the Twins. Because we got reports after the trade deadline that the Braves reached out to the Twins about the availability of Byron Buxton. Center fielder Byron Buxton, and he was not willing to waive his no-trade clause at the time, right? He signed a long-term deal. He says he was happy in Minnesota, and he does not want to leave Minnesota. That deal, by the way, has 3 more seasons left on it, $15 million each for 26, 27, and 28. It's his age, 32, 33, and 34 seasons. Again, $15.1 million. He has up to $11 million in performance and award bonuses. Okay. But new reporting from the GM meetings, this is Dan Hayes, Twins beat writer for The Athletic, says that a major league source, told him on Tuesday that Buxton wants to, this is the quote from the article, quote, wants to play for a winner and may reconsider his stance for certain clubs if the Twins continue breaking up their roster, potentially by trading starting pitchers Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez. And the hard part here is the team's general manager, Derek Falvey, said he wants, or I guess he's president of baseball operations, said he wants to build around those guys. Again, the quote from the general manager meetings, thanks to Dan, quote, I remain personally committed to figuring out what are the ways we can add to this group to make it better. That is my goal. It was my stated goal before and remains my stated goal until I'm told otherwise. My focus for now is figuring out ways we can add to the group. But here's the thing. Opposing teams don't think they're going to add. Their current payroll right now is like $95 million. It was a team record $153 million in 2023. They opened last season at $142. Ownership is trying to cut corners and lower costs because the team has a lot of debt. They have $425 million in debt. And Falvey said he's trying to find out. His goal is by the winter meetings, having more clarity on ownership because they're adding 2 limited partnership groups to provide an influx of cash and the payroll level that they're going for. And it's worth pointing out, a lot of the pitchers that they added at the trade deadline are major league ready. Taj Bradley from the Rays, Mick Abel from the Phillies, they had Kendry Rojas. Like, a lot of these guys are guys that could clearly be in the majors. So it's not like they got a bunch of single A and high A prospects and they planned on a 2 to 3 year window. The guys they got line up with this. Like, line up with trying to contend as soon as 26 or 27. But the point is, Byron Buxton is willing to reconsider his no trade clause if the team continues to subtract. And it's worth pointing out, not only have the Braves shown interest in him before, that's important to point out. They tried to acquire him at the trade deadline and were told no because he didn't want to waive the no trade clause. He fits the demographic of the type of player that Atlanta likes to go out and acquire. He was born in Baxley, Georgia. He went to Appling County High School in Baxley before being drafted out of high school by the Twins, number 2 overall in 2012. So he is a local kid. He is a Georgia boy. Now, he lives full-time, as I understand, in Minnesota, right? Like, he has a home. He has a home there in Minneapolis. He lives full-time up there, but he is a local kid. So you have to imagine he would at least consider waiving the no-trade clause for Atlanta. And the no-trade clause is only a full no-trade clause through 2026. After that, it becomes a limited no-trade clause, although I don't think that will matter because at that point, he'll have 10-5 rights. So I don't believe that matters at that point. He goes into this season just a couple days shy of 10 years of service time. So he'll have 10-5 rights. It doesn't matter that his contract gives him a limited no-trade clause after 2025 because he'll have, or after 26, because he'll have 10-5 rights. So is it possible the Braves look at a package deal here? Do they look at Pablo Lopez and Byron Buxton? I think Pablo Lopez is probably a cheaper acquisition than Joe Ryan is, simply because Joe Ryan has arguably been more consistent and better and costs less, right? Joe Ryan is still in arbitration control. He has arbitration for 26. He has arbitration for 27. He made only $3 million last year. That's probably going up to what, 5, maybe? And then after that, it's probably going up to like, what, 8, 9 at max if he's good. Whereas Pablo Lopez is signed for, I believe it's like right under $22 million a year, plus a club option to give him 2 years of control. Yes, 26 is $21.75 million, 27 is $21.75 million, and then he becomes a free agent after 2027 when he hits his age, like for his age 32 season. So you're in a scenario where can the Braves make a package deal to get Pablo Lopez and Byron Buxton? I'm really intrigued to see what happens. I really think that's probably, because again, if you make a trade to upgrade a position, this is assuming you can sign Ha-Seong Kim, starting pitcher is probably the place you have to do it if you want a quality guy, right? Like you can throw money at a bat in the outfield and go get a Cody Bellinger or something. I don't think you should. I don't think that profile is going to age well, so similar as I don't think with Bo Bichette, but you could do it, right? But starting pitcher, if you want a postseason caliber guy, you really can't throw money at that problem. There's just no way to do it. You have to trade a piece. You have to trade to acquire a guy. And I do think that's a possible path. If you can get Lopez and Buxton together, the salaries are manageable. Buxton gives you, when he's healthy, and that's the big caveat here, when he's healthy, he gives you an impact performer in the outfield. Last year, he played 126 games, hit .264 with an .878 OPS. It's a 136 OPS plus. He was an all-star. He was a silver slugger. 35 home runs, 24 stolen bases, was not caught stealing one time. So he was a very efficient 24 of 24. That was also only the third time in his 11-year career he had played over 100 games. Now, he's done it in 2 consecutive years. He played 102 games in 24, 126 games in 2025. But the point is, that's only the third time in his career he's played over 100 games. So there is risk here. But being able to use the DH role to cycle Ronald Acuna, cycle Profar, cycle Buxton through, feels like it's the way to keep them all healthy. And the big deal here, what I think is really important that nobody's talking about, is if Michael Harris stumbles again, you can be able to send him down to AAA if you need to, and you have a guy in Byron Buxton who can play center field for you. You have a starting caliber center fielder, both offensively and defensively, if Michael Harris struggles. It's not a situation where like, yeah, you can bench Michael Harris, but now you're playing Eli White every day. So I think this needs to be the number one target for Atlanta when you're trying to take care of you're trying to fill those 2 needs that AA said they are focused on right now. You need to find a way to sign Ha-Seong Kim, and then you need to find a way to trade for Pablo Lopez and Byron Buxton together. It's going to take a while. I don't expect a trade like that to happen until probably mid to late December. But I think that needs to be your priority on those 2 fronts. And everything else is a fallback measure. Every other possible starting pitcher signing, whether it's a Bassett, whether it's a Merrill Kelly, whether it's a Verlander or a Scherzer or whatever, those are all backup plans. Shortstop, whether it's trying to trade for Jordan Lawler, whatever it might be, those are all backup plans. Your priority needs to be sign Ha-Seong Kim, trade for Pablo Lopez and Byron Buxton. And if you can get a reliever or an infielder out of the Twins, more power to you. I don't think they trade Brooks Lee. He's their shortstop. Maybe they trade Austin Martin. He's played short, he's played second, he's played outfield, both center and corner. He'd give you a high-quality utility guy. Maybe you trade for him. I think he's an upgrade over Vidal Brujan. Maybe you make some sort of trade for an infield, for utility guy in there as well. Or a bullpen piece or something. But that needs to be your priority. Something that could possibly help convince Buxton to waive the no-trade clause is the Braves fleshed out their coaching staff yesterday and added a couple Twins coaches. We'll discuss that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Braves have finalized their coaching staff. There are 3 holdovers from last year, 2 of them in their same roles, 1 of them in a new role because Walt Weiss was promoted from bench coach to manager, clearly. Tim Hires is staying. He signed a 2-year deal last year. He is coming back as hitting coach. And I know that some people are not going to like that because of how bad the offense was in the first half. But in the second half, they were much better. Strikeout rate was down. Walk rate was up. They were hitting for more power. They felt more confident at the plate. The changes that Tim Hires was trying to implement were starting to work. They were starting to get better, right? Ozzie looked better. Some of that was getting away from his injury, right? Michael Harris had that heater for like a month where he was the best hitter in baseball. So there you go. So he is coming back. He will be supported by Darnell Coles as assistant hitting coach. And I actually like this. Hires had 2 assistant hitting coaches last year, and both of them were kind of new to being assistant hitting coaches, and clearly that wasn't working out. They are both out the door. And instead, it's just Cole. Coles has spent 12 seasons as hitting coach. He's coached for Washington. He's coached for Arizona. He's coached with the Brewers. He's been on a major league staff since 2014. He's 63. He's actually technically the oldest member of the coaching staff now at 63, which is nice to think about. You got 2 guys who are over the age of 60 and like 1 guy in his 50s and everybody else is 40s and 30s. It's kind of nice to think about, right? They are shifting Tony Mansolino. They announced him as a third base coach. He was third base coach for the Orioles and then became interim manager last year when they fired their manager. And so they announced they are shifting him from third base coach to bench coach. This happens. It's not really a big deal. This happens. But replacing him is Tommy Watkins. This is the reason why I'm a little optimistic about getting Byron Buxton to waive a no-trade clause to come to Atlanta. This is another guy who has been with the Minnesota Twins. So you remember we talked about this the other day. JP Martinez, who is your bullpen coach, he had coached with Jeremy Hefner in the minor leagues for the Twins. Watkins coached with the Twins as well. The last 7 years, he's been a major league coach for the Twins. He was the first base coach for a couple seasons, and then he spent the last 4 as third base coach and outfield coach for the Twins. He was Byron Buxton's outfield coach. He coached Byron Buxton in the outfield. Even if you end up not being able to trade for Buxton, they do have other outfielders that are intriguing. They have a bunch of young prospect outfielders that are getting ready to come up. And so in the meantime, some really good prospects. And so in the meantime, maybe it's an Austin Martin. Maybe you go and you ask for a Matt Wallner, who has a bunch of power but hasn't quite been able to put it all together. He still walks a lot, right? There's a couple different options, even if you end up Trevor Larnach as a lefty. You probably want Wallner's also a lefty. Martin's a righty. I think you want Martin over. If you can't get Buxton, I think you want Martin for the flexibility and the fact he's a righty. But they have a couple different outfield options that you have their old coach. So if they liked him and if he liked them, there you go. There's a possible in. Before all of that, he was a hitting coach or a manager in the minor leagues for the Twins. So he knows a lot of those guys. Again, he knows Buxton really well. He was Buxton's pitcher at the home run derby. Last time Buxton did the home run derby, Watkins pitched to him. That was the guy he chose to pitch to him. So there you go. Dustin Garneau is your catching coach. Catching coach. He was the bullpen coach last year for the Rockies. And I know the Rockies were not really good last year. They were pretty bad last year, obviously. But Hunter Goodman, their catcher, was an all-star. And he specifically gave credit to Garneau for his defense going from below average to above average in one season. Blocks above average, he was 70th percentile. Framing, he was 39th percentile. He still struggled a bit with caught stealing. Some of that was the Rockies' pitchers were just bad. Some of that was his arm strength wasn't awesome or anything. But Hunter Goodman single-handedly credited Garneau for getting him to be an above-average defensive catcher. So they brought him in to be the catcher. Before he was the bullpen coach, he was the catching and game planning coordinator. They made that job for him. So he's been really good at the game planning. Eddie Perez, who is coming back still as major league coach, he does a lot of that stuff now. He's been doing a lot of that now for he's been with the organization forever, it feels like. Eddie Perez has been with the organization through six different coaches or something like that. It's his 37th year with the organization, his 16th on the major league staff. There you go. So not quite 6 different coaches, but 16 years on staff, 37 years in the organization. Eddie Perez is a lifer for the Braves. So getting Garneau as your catching coach, kind of a big deal. We didn't have one last year. Remember, we used to have Sal Fasano, and when Travis d'Arnaud didn't come back, Sal Fasano also didn't come back. And he took a job in LA with the Angels, along with d'Arnaud getting a job there. They also did hire Tony Diaz as a major league coach. So you have 2 coaches that are major league coaches, not a specific position, just major league coaches. He had been with Minnesota and Colorado. Those are 2 organizations he's worked with. He was first base coach for Colorado, and then after 2018, he left and went to Minnesota. Was third base coach, assistant bench coach. He was also the infield instructor. So you have another guy to help with your infield instruction. 8 8 new coaches. Hires and Perez return, and then Walt Weiss obviously returns but shifts jobs. So 11-man coaching staff, 10 assistants to go along with Walt Weiss. And the big thing here, I've mentioned this a couple times now, a lot of these guys are really young. Hefner's not 40. Watkins is 45. Garneau's 38. Diaz is like 48. Hires is 54. Again, Coles is the oldest guy, and he's 63. You have like 2 guys in their 60s. Everybody else is in their 50s or 40s or even some 30s. I love this coaching staff. A lot of these guys have good reputations. It's guys who are open to data, who are open to using analytics to make the team better. I really feel like this is the best way to set up Walt Weiss for success. You have the advantage of getting Walt Weiss's experience, his familiarity with the team, with the roster, his relationships. But then you get all of these newcomers that can bring a fresh eye to what the Braves have been doing and find ways to make it better. I think this is the perfect blend of new and old. I love this coaching staff. It's been Braves Today for Wednesday, November 12th. Do me a favor. If you're listening on audio, a 5-star review would be fantastic. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode, when we drop a short, a bonus, anything like that. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.